Hey everyone, today I've got something that might really surprise you. Japan is often seen as a strict country that follows the rules, especially from an outsider's perspective. But in fact, there are several laws that are illegal in other countries but legal here in Japan. Hey, I'll introduce 5 such Japanese laws that might make you go, wait, this is really legal? It could be that the laws in your country are completely different, so make sure to let me know in the comments. But don't forget, this video was made purely for entertainment purposes. I'm not endorsing any of the laws I'm going to talk about, so please keep that in mind while watching. Alright, let's jump right in. The first surprising fact is that in Japan, you can keep owls as pets. In other countries, especially in the US and much of Europe, owls are considered wild animals and are protected. The idea of keeping an owl as a pet is practically unthinkable in these countries. Owls are classified as specially protected species, and their commercial trade in captivity are heavily restricted. Since they're supposed to live in the wild, these countries have strict regulations to protect their natural environment. However, here in Japan, surprisingly, it's legal to keep an owl as a pet. In fact, there are even places called owl cafes where you can hold and interact with owls while enjoying tea or coffee. Owls are nocturnal, meaning they need a specific environment to live in. It's important to provide them with the right food and a spacious habitat. But in Japan, as long as you get the necessary permits, it's possible to keep an owl at home. Of course, you'll need to have the proper knowledge to care for them, but compared to other countries, Japan's regulations are quite relaxed in this regard. There are a few cultural reasons why owls are popular in Japan. First of all, owls are considered to be good luck birds here. Their adorable faces and large eyes have endeared them to many people. There's also a wordplay in Japanese where fukuru owl can mean luck arrives. This belief that owls bring fortune has made them a symbol of good luck. Additionally, their calm and mysterious appearance resonates with the Japanese mindset. Owl cafes in Tokyo and Osaka are incredibly popular tourist attractions. In places like Asakusa and Shibuya, you can visit owl cafes where you can see owls up close or even hold them. Foreign tourists often say, this is something you can only experience in Japan, as they enjoy the unique opportunity. There are even owl enthusiasts who keep them as pets at home. For example, one family set up a special space in their living room specifically for their pet owl, creating an environment where their nocturnal owl could freely fly around. Of course, this requires a lot of effort, and owls are delicate animals, so it's not easy. But with the right care and environment, it's possible. Next, let's talk about Japan's Entertainment Business Control Law, also known as FUHO. This law regulates the operating hours of businesses like clubs, bars, and karaoke rooms, and compared to other countries, it's really strict. In other countries, especially in cities in the US and Europe, clubs and bars typically stay open until the early morning. People can enjoy music and dance all night. However, in Japan, depending on the area, clubs must stop their activities after midnight or 1 a.m. due to the FUHO law. This law exists in many urban areas across Japan and was originally created to prevent young people from staying out too late and getting into trouble. In some places, it's enforced quite strictly, making it a major obstacle for club culture. The Fuiiho law has its roots in post-war Japan, when it was created to maintain public morals. During the 1950s, as Japan was rebuilding, nightclubs and cafes started popping up everywhere, and there were concerns about the decline in morals. As a result, the Fuiiho law was enacted to restrict the operating hours of clubs and dance halls in order to protect public decency. Although the law has been amended over time, it's surprising that dance regulations remained in place for so long. In recent years, there have been efforts to relax these restrictions in certain areas, but the law is still strictly enforced in many parts of the country. For example, in Americamora, a vibrant club district in Osaka, many clubs were shut down in the 2010s due to violations of the FUHO law. This crackdown caused many clubs to close down, leading to a decline in club culture. However, club owners and music fans began organizing anti-dance regulation movements, calling for changes to the law. Finally, in 2016, some clubs were allowed to operate late at night again, and the club scenes in Osaka and Tokyo have slowly started to recover. Even so, compared to other countries, the restrictions still feel quite strict. Foreign tourists are often shocked by this law. Those who come to Japan for the club scene often ask, why are there such strict regulations in Japan? Despite this, Japan's club culture remains strong, and it's still a popular experience for tourists. Next up is a law that might surprise you. In Japan, it's legal to drink alcohol in public places. This is something that's hard to believe for people from other countries, particularly in the US and Europe, where drinking alcohol in public is banned. In the US, for example, many states prohibit drinking in parks or on beaches, and if you crack open a beer on the street, you'll be stopped by the police right away. But in Japan, you can buy alcohol from a convenience store, open it on the spot, and drink it right there in public. And it's a completely normal sight. During cherry blossom season, there's a traditional event called Hanami, where people gather in parks to view the cherry blossoms while drinking alcohol. This kind of event is unique to Japan, and it often amazes visitors from other countries. In Japan, there's a deeply ingrained culture of enjoying alcohol in public spaces. During Hanami season or at summer festivals, it's common to see people drinking in parks or by the river. Friends and family gather, enjoying beer or sake while chatting under the open sky. Of course, it's important not to overdo it and disturb others, but in Japan, people take responsibility for their actions, and that's what makes this kind of behavior acceptable. This may be related to Japan's unique spirit of hospitality and respect for others' freedom. As long as people follow basic manners, public drinking is seen as perfectly fine. This is something that foreign tourists find really fascinating. Every spring, places like Yoyogi Park in Tokyo and Osaka Castle Park become crowded with Hanami parties. People spread out picnic sheets under the cherry trees and enjoy beer, chuhai, or sake from the afternoon until evening. It's a scene that's unique to Japan, and for many Japanese people, it's an event that marks the arrival of spring. During summer, at events like fireworks festivals, drinking in public is also allowed. For instance, at the Sumida River Fireworks Festival in Tokyo, people sit by the river, drink in hand, and enjoy the fireworks display. This kind of experience often leaves a lasting impression on tourists. In many countries, particularly in the US and Europe, public drinking is heavily regulated. So, the freedom to drink openly in Japan often comes as a culture shock to visitors. Some tourists even find themselves in awe of how easy it is to buy a drink at a convenience store and enjoy it in a public park. Next, let's talk about how easy it is to buy cigarettes at Japanese convenience stores. Japanese convenience stores are already famous for being too convenient, but what really shocks foreign tourists is how easy it is to buy cigarettes. In many countries, especially in Europe and the US, tobacco sales are strictly regulated. ID checks are enforced to prevent minors from purchasing cigarettes, and cigarette sales are limited to specialized shops. However, in Japan, you can easily buy cigarettes at nearly any convenience store. In Japan, you can simply ask the cashier for a pack of cigarettes and get them with no hassle. Of course, it's illegal to sell cigarettes to minors in Japan as well, but for adults, there's no need for any special ID checks, and you can buy cigarettes easily. There are even vending machines that sell cigarettes, and by using a TASPO card, you can purchase them anytime. Compared to other countries, Japan's regulations on cigarette sales are surprisingly relaxed. In many countries, cigarette sales are restricted by time and location, making Japan's 24-hour access to cigarettes at convenience stores quite rare. In the US, for example, cigarettes can only be bought at specific stores, and strict ID checks are mandatory. This can be a hassle for tourists who need to go out of their way just to buy cigarettes. But in Japan, tourists can simply walk into a convenience store, buy cigarettes with no extra steps, and be on their way. This ease of purchase often leaves them astonished. Japanese convenience stores don't just sell cigarettes, they sell all sorts of items, making them extremely convenient for tourists. The fact that you can buy cigarettes late at night is another unique feature of Japanese convenience stores, something you won't often see in other countries. This convenience is one of the major attractions of Japan's convenience stores. Finally, let's talk about Japan's labor laws regarding working hours. Japan is known for its long working hours, to the point where there are even words like karoshi, death from overwork. In most other countries, the standard working hours are around 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week, and anything beyond that is expected to come with overtime pay. However, in Japan, this isn't always the case. In many companies, long working hours are silently accepted. In black companies, employees are often forced to work under harsh conditions, and this isn't uncommon. Japan has a Labor Standards Act, but in reality, it's often not followed, and long working hours are simply overlooked. Japan has a deeply rooted work culture that values working long hours as a virtue. This mindset became widespread during the post-war Reconstruction period when loyalty to the company was emphasized. Even today, this culture persists, especially in large companies and some small to mid-sized businesses, where long working hours are the norm. The term karoshi, which refers to death from overwork, exists because working too much has had serious health impacts on people in Japan. Despite being a problem, long working hours aren't seen as entirely illegal and are sometimes accepted by society, making this a uniquely Japanese issue. One notable case was when a young female employee at a major advertising firm died from overwork, which became a major news story. She had worked over 100 hours of overtime in a single month, eventually reaching her mental and physical limits. This incident led to discussions about work-style reforms, but even now, long working hours remain common in many companies. Despite the attention given to cases like this, the culture of long working hours is still deeply ingrained in Japan. The labor environment that would be unimaginable in other countries is seen as normal in Japan, which often leaves foreigners in shock. So, that's it for this video about laws that are illegal in other countries but legal in Japan. How was it? You may have a completely different law in your country. Let us know in the comments what the situation is like where you live. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting insights into Japanese culture. See you again in the next video.